am Dr. Sonal Jain from Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. In this series of forensic science lecture, today we are going to read about soil analysis. Soil as an evidence is very important. It is found mostly at each and every crime scene. Whenever any criminal or any suspect who enters the crime scene, soil can be found out at the entrance or at the exit from where the criminal might have entered or left the crime scene. So, depending upon the soil which we have to analyze from the crime scene, it can be collected from the crime scene. Going with the soil analysis, we will read about what is the definition of soil, how the soil is being formed, how can we analyze and examine soil, what is the soil profile, and what are the different types of soil. So, to start with the definition of soil, soil analysis is the analysis of a soil sample to determine nutrient, contaminated content, composition and other characteristics such as acidity or pH level. So, whenever we encounter any soil sample from the crime scene, we are looking for what is the nutrient content of that particular soil, how much contamination is there in the soil, what is the composition of that soil, and also to look for other factors, the pH level or acidity of the soil. Every soil have different nutrient content depending upon what is the parent material of that soil and what is the bedrock of that soil. Composition also varies from place to place. So, that is why the composition, the nutrient, the contaminated content, it makes the soil as a unique evidence to use in forensic science. The tap water or chemicals, they also can change the composition of the soil. So, therefore, they also need to be tested separately. Firstly, when we are analyzing the soil evidence, we will also analyze the tap water or the chemicals near it. The soil nutrients, they also vary with depth and its components change with time. So, the depth and timing of a sample may also affect the results. As we go, we can see the soil profile, the top layer, the subsoil layer, they all are different. So, we need to look for when we are analyzing the soil as an evidence that which depth, from which depth or at what depth the soil has been collected or from where the soil has come. Also, when we talk about the timing, how the soil, at what time particularly the soil was taken or the soil evidence was being there found at the shoes of any criminal or at the vehicle of any criminal or any victim, which will give us much more information. So, to define soil, it is a naturally deposited material that covers the earth's surface and which is capable of supporting plant growth. When we are talking about the earth, the 75% of the earth is oceans, seas and lakes, 15% is the deserts, polarized caps and mountains, and 10% which remains, which is suitable for agriculture. So, the soil, when we define it, it is basically the naturally deposited materials or minerals which has come from the parent material, the mountains, with the water, and with the time the soil profile is being maintained. Whenever the soil formation takes place, it has many factors. The first thing, the living matter near it, the plants which are near it, the animals which are near it, and the microorganisms which are near it. It defines, the microbiota defines also the living matter in the soil formation. Then we have the inorganic materials, the climate, which also plays a major role in the formation of the soil. If the climate is arid, then we have the soil which is very dry. But if the climate is very rainy, then we have a soil which is very wet. The next major important thing is the parent material. The parent material, it depends upon what the parent rock is. So, the weathering of the parent rock, the pedogenesis, they all define the soil formation, which helps in the soil formation. So, that is why if the parent materials are different, the soil at different places will be different. Then the relief, which defines the slope and the landform. What kind of landform is there, whether it is a hilly area or it is an area which is near a water body like sea, any beach area or any area which is near a desert. So, it all depends upon the landform also. Then the major important factor which plays a major role in the soil formation is time. As the time passes by, the bedrock or the parent material, it goes down deep. Then we have the topsoil and the subsoil on the top of that, which might contain different contaminants, different nutrients depending upon the area where we are talking about the soil of. So, the climate of that area, the relief of that area, the inorganic materials in that area, the living matter in that area, whatever plants are growing on the top of the soil, it all define the major and the further soil formation. So, the profile, when we say it has a topsoil, subsoil and parent material, and it forms because of the weathering or the pedogenesis. The composition, if we say, the soil may have sand, silt, clay and certain organic matter. When we are talking about the organic matter, we are talking about various plants, animals and microorganisms. Microorganisms also play a major role in the soil formation. As when we are analyzing the soil, we might analyze the soil for various microbiota. The microbiota of soil from a place and another place, they differ. So, that can also be one of the major factor in individualizing from which area the soil evidence belongs to. So, soil evidence can be collected or can be found at various places. It can be found from the shoes of the victim or the shoes of the criminal. It can be found on the vehicle of the criminal or the victim, and we have to very carefully extract that evidence from these places. Then the next thing is about the nutrients. There are nutrients, macro and micronutrients, which are present in the soil. When we are talking about the macronutrients, we have the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium and sulfur. And when we are talking about the micronutrients, we have manganese, iron, boron, copper, zinc and chlorine. So, these nutrients which are present in the soil, they define how the growth of the plants will be when they are grown on the soil. And these nutrients sometimes also give a specific color to the soil. That is why whenever any presumptive or preliminary test is being conducted on the soil, then we also go for the color test. The color test, the first thing, presumptive test, if the color of the soil is different, then we can easily say that they are not from the same place. But we can do further tests to know what are the various micronutrients and macronutrients which are present in the soil. So, the next major topic is the soil formation, how the soil formation takes place. So, the major part when we are talking about the soil formation, it is from the parent rock or the parent mineral where it comes from by the process of weathering. The weathering includes various physical, chemical and biological factors which results in the formation of soil. The next thing is the pedogenesis, which involves various biological factors. The major biological factors combined of the various flora and fauna, or we can call the biosphere or zoosphere of that particular area. Depending upon what are the plants which are growing there and what are the animals which are found there, which also defines the inorganic and organic matter. So, to talk about the soil formation, or which we call as pedogenesis, it is the process of evolution of soil under the influence of various physical, biological, climatic and geological factors. So, when we are talking about various physical and biological factors, the physical factors talk about the various forces which are being exerted over the parent rock, which results in the loss of some mineral and which give minerals to the soil while the formation of soil. The biological factors talks about the various plants and animals in the soil. The climatic factors talk about how much rainfall is being there in that particular area, whether the area is dry, whether the area is humid. So, depending upon that, the soil would be different. The geological factors also defines the same. The soil formation occurs through a series of changes to the parent material and which leads to the formation of layers, and we call these layers of the soil as the soil horizons. We have 4 to 5 different horizons in the soil and they can be separated based on the composition of this, and they have also different physical properties. So, when we talk about the various factors which affect the soil formation, they are the parent material, the topography, climate, various organisms, and the major important factor, last but not the least, is the time. Then the parent material, when we are talking about, it refers to the initial solid material that makes up the soil. Before we call the soil as soil, there is the parent material which comes from a rock nearby it by the process of weathering or various physical or chemical factors, which results in the formation or the major base of the soil. This might include consolidated substances like rocks or unconsolidated particles like water deposits, volcanic ashes or organic matter. It all depends upon what the parent rock or the parent material is. The composition of this material affects the soil formation as it determines the soil composition. Like if we take an example, if there is a rock which contains iron, it will result in an iron rich soil. If there is a rock which is magnesium rich, the soil which will be found near that place will be magnesium rich soil. An iron rich soil will have a higher pH and darker color. So, depending upon what mineral the parent rock contains, the composition of the soil will be same of that the parent material, and the color of the soil also is dependent upon that composition. So, when we talk about the major presumptive test of the soil, so we look for the color test. So, if the color of the soil varies, then we can put them into different categories based on the class characteristics that their color is different. So, parent material, they come or being collected at that place via various factors like wind, water, volcanoes, which results in differences in the initial composition of the rock. So, the influence of parent material can be observed in adjacent soils that frequently exhibit different soil profile due to different parent material. So, the parent material, if it is different, so the soil will be different, the mineral content of that soil will be different, the macro and micronutrients on the soil will also be different. If there are changes in the parent material during soil formation, which can be either abrupt or subsequent over a longer period of time. The next major factor which helps or which talks about the soil formation is the topography. Topography in the soil formation process includes factors like geological structure of the elevation above the sea level, configuration and the slope. So, the parent material's topography or the soil where it is being formed, the geological structure plays an important role. The position of the parent material or the soil during pedogenesis, it influences the hydrological cycle, transpiration and such processes. So, in that case, it also defines whether the soil will be wet or the soil will be dry. It is also been observed that the soil profiles on the convex slopes are more shallow with less distinct sublayers than the soils on the top of the concave slopes. So, depending upon whether we have a convex slope or a concave slope, the topography will be different. However, the organic matter of the soil at the lower slopes is higher due to runoffs than the soil at higher slopes. The topography might be susceptible to changes over time when we have certain processes like soil erosions, earthquakes, which affects the process of soil formation. So, along with topography, if we have certain other factors combined, for example, in a natural calamity like an earthquake or the soil erosion, the process of soil formation will be affected. So, after the topography, another factor which defines or which plays a major role in the pedogenesis is climate. Climate as a factor of pedogenesis refers to the weather as the soil evolves over long time scales. When we are talking about the long time scales, we are talking about hundreds and thousands of years. The soil formation is not a process, a day or two process. It takes years and years for soil formation. And the climate, when we talk about, they include rainfall, temperature, storm patterns in that area. The direct effect of climate on soil formation is via water and solar energy. So, water is a medium for the life cycles of various soil organisms, whereas sunlight affects the concentration of water on the soil. It depends the sunlight, if it is the area, the climate where the sunlight is a lot, then the soil would be a bit drier because the concentration of water in that soil will be less. But when the sunlight is less, the concentration of water in the soil will be more. So, it plays a direct effect on the soil formation because water and solar energy, they are directly proportional to the soil formation in that context. Then we talk about the effect of climate on soil formation that can be clearly seen in the cases of desert soils that are usually present around the equatorial region with high solar and water energy. Whereas in the temperate regions where the climate is humid, which results in tropical soil which have sufficient moisture. So, depending upon when we encounter any soil evidence or any soil particles, then we will also look for whether they have come from which type of climate, which will in turn lead us to from where the victim or the criminal might have been travelling or they have been coming from various different places. Another factor for soil formation is organisms. The process of soil formation, it's heavily influenced by the animal inhabitants, the human population and the vegetation of that particular area. In the cases of effects caused by vegetation, it has been observed that soils present under trees tend to more acidic and they contain much less humus than those under the grass. So, the more acidic soil is being found which are under the trees. These differences are observed due to the differences in the litter produced by the two different types of vegetation. So, if there is a difference in the vegetation, then the process of soil formation will be highly influenced also by that, depending upon what kind of animals will be residing nearby or over that area. So, human beings also affect the pedogenesis by either removal or burial of soil profile, by the construction work or the modification of organic matter by agriculture or irrigation. So, a particular type of soil can be made more fertile if we add more organic matter or if we add more water to that particular soil. So, whatever the natural process of soil formation, that can be altered if we are providing extra artificial nutrients or the organic nutrients to the soil, or if we are providing the extra water to that particular soil. So, whenever we are analyzing any evidence, we have to look for that there could be, apart from the natural factors, other factors also responsible, like the factors which are related with the human beings. They might have given other nutrients to the soil, we have to look for those additional factors also. The soil animals and microorganisms, they also affect soil formation as they influence the organic content of the soil and the texture due to their metabolic and physical activity. So, when we are talking about the microbiota of a particular soil, depending upon what is the content, organic content in that soil and the texture in that soil, so the microorganisms growth will be different in different areas depending upon what kind of soil is that. Now, the factor, most important factor is time. Even though factors like topography, parent materials, they are site related, when we talk about the factors like climate and organisms, they are flux related, that is input from the surroundings. But time is a factor that is neither dependent on the site or the flux, but can bring significant changes abruptly. So, the soil formation takes place in at different intervals of time. That is why we have different horizons when we talk about the soil profile. So, with time, if there are any climatic conditions which changes period over time, a soil which used to be dry at a certain point of time, then that soil can become fertile if the climatic conditions of that particular area changes. It is an independent factor. However, we consider that an abstract variable that shows that the evolution of soil might change without any external inputs. The effects of time on the soil profile can be observed by the composition of the soil, where the accumulation of clay and lime in the sublayers occurs due to downward translocation. So, when we are talking about the downward translocation, with that there might be certain extra accumulation which might occur as the passage of time. So, analyzing this evidence in this light, we have to look for all these factors. We also look for what is the humus content in the soil horizons, which also differ with aging. If there is a newly made soil, that will have different horizons, and if a soil which is very old, then that soil has different horizons. So, when we look for the process soil formation, which we call pedogenesis, there are certain factors or process or steps of that. The first one is the bedrock, is the parent material. Whenever the weathering begins in the parent material, there is disintegration in the bedrock, which could be due to wetting, drying, or which could be due to excessive rainfall or other climatic factors, and the bedrock, it tries to disintegrate. After the disintegration of the bedrock, the parent material, it comes over the bedrock. So, that makes our, after the bedrock, the second layer, if we go from downwards to upwards, it is always the parent material. The parent material is something which is coming from the nearby area or the nearby rocks, which also defines the nutrients of that, minerals of that particular parent material. So, bedrock, and then going upwards we have the parent material, and then we have the sea horizon. In sea horizon we have the various macro and micronutrients. In between C and A horizon, with time there is B horizon. At the top of that we have organic matter, living matter and inorganic matter. So, when we talk about the total soil formation profile, we have different A horizon, B horizon, C horizon, parent material and bedrock, which totally defines the soil profile. Depending upon from which horizon the sample has come for the where we have found the sample for the analysis or the evidence is being collected, we have to collect the sample from the same horizons. To compare the samples which is collected from the crime scene, similarly we have to collect the samples from different horizons, so that that can be actually compared to each other. So, the individual characteristic of that and class characteristic of that will help us is knowing from which area the soil has been collected. So, to conclude, I will say that soil as an evidence is very important and can lead us to from where the victim or criminal might have started or might have ended the particular crime. Thank you.